Devops. Auf die Ohren und ins Hirn. Ein Podcast rund um Devops.
Von Dirk Söllner, Falco Werner und Luca Ingianni. Welcome to a new episode of Devops auf die Ohren und ins Hirn, or in English, Devops from your ears straight to your brain. Usually this is a German language podcast, but we sometimes make exceptions for international guests. Today is one such exception. My name is Luca Ingianni, and I host this podcast together with my colleagues Dirk Söllner and Falco Werner. We are DevOps consultants, trainers, and coaches trying to get teams to work together better and create better products for their customers. Today, it'll be Falco and me running the episode, and we are joined by Steve Nixon to talk to us about ServiceNow. Hi, Steve. Very welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Steve, who are you anyway?
So I run as head of service management or head of service operations. So I'm the guy who takes the incidents, the changes, the problems, and sees those through. And DevOps people are usually my third line. So we have a first line, which is the help desk. We have a second line, which takes scripts and generally work things in the background, but take easy stuff. And then we have the third line, which is support teams and stuff that's going to take a bit more in-depth knowledge and a bit more time to fix.
Which brings us to another fun question that we ask every guest who shows up on the show. Steve, please tell us, what is your definition of DevOps?
So DevOps to me, traditionally we've had app dev teams, application development teams that are put together, they develop a product, they throw it over the wall to support, and they disappear and disband and become somebody else again. In this modern world, development doesn't tend to finish. We don't do a lot of waterfall type projects that finish and never update ever again. We're much more web-based, so development is agile, it's ongoing, and the development team become the operations team. So when something goes wrong with it, we phone the actual development team. And because they've got the insight and the knowledge on how it's built, they know how to fix it, which is a lot easier than the app dev team that we used to deal with, which are usually just given a huge load of documentation by the dev team, which may be very incomplete, and are left to just support the thing and usually can't reach a developer because he's disappeared off to another project.
And how does it work for you? Is it better than before or worse?
It's better from my perspective. When we reach out to people, to teams and need them to join a call, the in-depth knowledge that the development team bring to the incident generally resolves it quicker. Where we do hit issues is where the development team have gone from a development with an app support team to a DevOps team. They don't necessarily realize that they're going to get called at 2:00 in the morning to fix an incident. And management aren't very good at explaining this until it actually happens.
They hand over their phone number freely until they get called, right?
Well, yes, I mean, that's part of being a third-line support team. You have a designated person on call, but that it just doesn't seem to register to people that on call means you're going to get called at some point.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is surprising, isn't it? You get told you're on call, and then people call you.
Yeah, well, the way that a lot of DevOps teams work in the organizations I've worked, they'll have a development team, and then they'll have a rotating area of support people within that team. So they've got a queue of incidents that my guys are sending them. Those need fixing. The customers need updating. It's not usually the most glamorous piece of work, so they don't generally allocate people to it full time, but they'll have people switch in to it. So when they say they're on call, they expect that means we'll get, if something goes wrong during the day, we'll be called into the bridge. We'll have to deal with it. But sometimes we have the bridge at 2:00 in the morning because these apps on the web are 24/7. And, the organizations I've worked at are international organizations, and there's people using them all the time. So when they break, I get a phone call at 2:00 in the morning. My team get on bridges at 2:00 in the morning. We pull in who we need to fix it.
But wouldn't it, in that case, also make sense to have a distributed support team so that nobody gets called at 2 a.m. because it's always like 3 in the afternoon someplace?
To an extent, I mean, I've worked in organizations that have people in Singapore, UK, and America. But what tends to happen is they're localized to their markets. Cost-saving initiatives generally put service management in one place.
How often does it happen that you need to resort to third-line support in the first case? Do you escalate? I guess you're not escalating anything because then you'd just be a glorified phone answering machine. But who gets to make that decision? How is it made? How do you maybe talk about that afterwards?
Yes, that's a reasonable question. I mean, we have service operations processes. Generally, we want to fix as many things as we can at first line because we've got the user on the phone, they've rung up, they've got the problem. If our staff can pick up the procedures, do whatever they need to do on the system and get that user back up and running, that's great. If it's going to take a little bit more than they can or a little bit more in depth, or the manual, and I'm not joking here, the manual might be 80 pages long, we'll hand that off to level 2, which again falls in my remit. It's a team of people usually siloed across desktop, network, telephony, data center, probably a team specific to email. And they've got a lot more in-depth, specialist knowledge of those systems. So the call will go to them, but the user won't. The user will be taken off the call and told to expect a call back. And we've got SLAs around those pieces that say that they've got to pick that call up from the queue within a certain period of time. They've got to put an update on the system. And they've got to get back in touch with the user in some way to give them an update on what they're doing. Now, as to the rough numbers, we try to fix around 60 to 80% of calls at first and second line. Depending on the organization, depending on the processes that we have, we try to fix the majority at first line, but in a real world scenario, we probably get 50, 60% at first line.
Forgotten passwords and the like, I guess.
We're trying to get away from password resets altogether, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough.
The last 3 organizations I've worked at have had more and more sort of secure and robust methods of self-service password reset. And actually, one of the things that the pandemic has achieved for us is the understanding of people having two-factor authentication. Self-service password reset has become the norm. We're using mobile devices a lot more than we were. Every organization I've worked at used to be primarily desktop-based. It's now primarily laptop-based. And that thought, along with the ubiquitous of mobile phones that goes along with it, has generally taken password resets out of the equation. So, it used to be 45% easily of the amount of calls that my help desk would get. And the last place that I worked, we were down to 8 or 9% a week were password resets.
So those 8 or 9% were the complicated cases where the self-service just broke down for some reason, right?
It was usually because the two-factor authentication got out of sync.
So actually, we're naming this podcast session something about ServiceNow. Where does that fit in?
So ServiceNow is the management software that we use within service operations. You've probably used a variation of it if you've ever logged a ticket. We have a number of ways of reaching out or receiving information from a user who's got a problem. They can ring us up, and the person on the end of the phone will be typing their problem into ServiceNow and creating a ticket for them. They will then get an email at the end of the call with that ticket number that they can click on, and it will take them into the ticket management system, which, we're talking about ServiceNow, but it could be Zendesk. It could be something that they've made internally. HP make one. There's a number of them, but ServiceNow is by far the biggest. And it's also didn't really grow out of trying to be something else. It was built from the ground up to be a service management system. Or we have, and what we prefer is that if you go to the internal website, there'll be a button there that says log an incident. And they can go there and they can type just a few things in about their stuff. There'll be drop downs that we allow to give them a bit more targeted approach, because we don't like free text fields, because users will type all sorts of things in. The amount of people who have problems with their monitor when their PC won't turn on is very large. So we give them drop downs, we give them, forms that guide them in the right direction. And those will, if somebody's typed that in, that will automatically reroute to the team that needs to deal with it best. And that's why we use these things. If I go back to, early days in my career, everything went to the help desk, and the help desk logged it manually. The first system I ever worked on was based on a mainframe. So we all had to use, green screen emulators to log on to the mainframe and pick up the tickets. And there were no drop downs. It was all free text. And the help desk would do their best to put the information in, and then it would go to the single second line support team, which is where I started my career. And then we would pick it up and we'd distribute it amongst the bunch of people that we had in the office who had various different specialities. And then if we needed to go to a third line support, an app team, we'd literally walk downstairs with the call and go and sit with them and try and resolve what was going on, and then get back to the user. As things have scaled up and things have got a bit more automatic, ServiceNow does away with a lot of that. A properly formatted ticket with the correct information in it can be sent to one of several hundred resolver groups correctly, so that it doesn't have to be bounced and triaged around the system. And that gets the user fixed quicker, which is what we're all about.
So it sounds like ServiceNow is just a regular issue tracker, a regular bug tracker kind of thing, isn't it?
So that's the incident part of it. It also tracks problem tickets. For those who don't know, the difference, an incident is something that's wrong. You can't log on to your email. Your PC's not booting up. Your browser's crashing. It's causing you an actual problem there and then. A problem ticket is something that is probably affecting a wider range of people, but it isn't causing them to stop working in their job. We've probably got a workaround, or we've got a patch in the system that we know in IT is not a good idea, but it's getting things working so that the business can keep going. So we raise a problem ticket to keep working on it in the background. The third thing service management tools do, and ServiceNow in particular, is change management. Everything within the organization has to be controlled where there's change. We get changes raised off the back of incident problem tickets. So, most of the stuff we've been talking about is user related, but if we get an entire system down, then there's probably a patch to it, or there's a reboot of the system, or there's a clear down of the cache. All of that has to be logged in a change ticket and approved, and the business team's made aware of what we're doing, and service management automates all of that. So if you get, say, a mail system that's just crashed, the first thing we want to do is reboot it. But that may have a knock-on effect on a few other people attaching to the thing, so you may have to inform the network team, because they've got an upstream system that's sending outbound mail internally, you just got to let people know. And that's what the change management module does. As you put in the systems, you've got automatic lookups on who's affected, and they get automatic emails, and where necessary, they get approval emails, and your change doesn't go ahead until you've got approval from everybody who needs to approve it. Just means everybody's informed. And then the other thing it does, and not every organization has implemented this yet because it's a big piece of work, but it has a config management system within it. And that hooks into all of the other bits, the incident, the problem, the change. So within config management, you're tracking not just your hardware, you're tracking the network systems that it's connected to. You're tracking the applications that are on that. You're then tracking your license information to those applications. And if you get the whole thing built out, and it's not an easy job, but when it is built out, you can pick out a system and look at all the upstream and downstream dependencies of it. You can get total control over what is running on that machine, what else is running on that machine, which teams need to be told that something's going to be rebooted or to be patched or upgraded. And the whole thing hooks back in. So when you raise an incident on something, you've got the right resolver teams automatically updated. When you raise a change ticket, you've got the right support teams and the right business teams automatically updated. And it just makes our life a lot easier.
How does that hook into cloud-based systems like scalable, container-based systems?
ServiceNow follows a infrastructure. I'm trying to think of the right word. A process called ITIL. Mm-hmm. And ITIL has gone through various iterations. We're now up to ITIL version 4, and ServiceNow has upgraded as ITILs come along. ITIL version 4 specifically gives processes and ways of dealing with cloud. We started at ITIL version 3 with virtualization. So you'd have a rack of machines, and on there you'd have 200 VMs. And within the config management database, you had to be able to hook back where the VM was at any one time. So they work with the manufacturers to make sure that when VMs move around for load balancing, all that is updated in the config management database. When they moved into cloud-based, it took a while before ITIL version 4 caught up and put process around that. But again, service management tools, ServiceNow in particular, have modules that hook into the main platforms. So Google, Azure, Amazon, we can hook into their management consoles and again, get the information back that we need to. Now, the information that we get from there is limited. You're not going to get what processor it's running on, what memory it's running on. All that stuff we don't care, to be honest. We just treat them as virtual machines, essentially. And we've already got ways of dealing with virtual machines, albeit on-prem ones. We're now just in the cloud. And then in service management, we liaise with the cloud providers extremely closely. So when they're doing any back-end infrastructure upgrades, they'll let us know. It should be seamless. They should load balance across the bits that they're not updating, but they let us know anyway. And that way we've got, if something comes in at 3:00 in the morning, we've got a very good idea of why.
Sounds quite interesting to me. I wasn't aware that there are so many connectors available to the different cloud providers and directly able to hook those to service management systems in case of what we're talking about here, ServiceNow. So good to hear that and to try to understand what the advantages are.
It can get even better. So one of the companies that I've worked with a couple of times now is a company called Dynatrace, but other companies exist that do similar. And they can give you a holistic view of your application stack. It doesn't matter whether it's cloud, container, virtual, or physical. There are simple bits of code that actually get embedded into the code. So you work with the dev teams to put that in, and the whole thing hooks back. The Dynatrace module monitors all the traffic going between things, all the interconnects between applications. It knows what's normal, and therefore it can spot abnormalities. And Dynatrace can automatically raise the tickets in ServiceNow to get them to the teams, often before they realize there's even a problem.
Sounds like magic.
It's expensive magic, but it is. It is magic.
Yeah, isn't magic always expensive? You have to pay with something. Either you have to study and learn it in Hogwarts, or you need to buy the wand. And this time, yeah, it's a Dynatrace IT magic wand.
Indeed.
If I'm thinking about service management, you talked about help desk and several levels of support, problem and incident management and change management and configuration management. How are things like availability management, things like capacity management and improvement part of that?
It's all built in. The way ServiceNow works, there are modules for all of those things. It just depends where a company is on its journey through service management as to where those things are. It takes a very long time and a lot of work to set up configuration management. The next obvious step after that is license management. Off the back of that, you can get availability management. Capacity management tends to run in parallel at a certain point. I started, my first proper contract job way back in, I don't know, about 2007 was a capacity management role, setting up capacity management for a banking organization. And we did that pretty manually. We had to still build the config management piece, but it was very basic. We concentrated on servers only, not desktops, and we got only the information that we needed. But off the back of that piece of work, the teams that we were working with saw the benefit of it, and that organization went on to do a full CMDB. And when I left, they were just doing asset management properly. It all takes time. It's all a building block. The one that seems to be spearheading at the minute is the movement from change management to release management. A lot of dev teams it hooks into your DevOps conversation. I suppose the main issue we have with dev teams is that they tend to try to avoid the change management process. A change management process in a typical organization will expect you to raise your change a few days ahead of when you expect to do it. It will expect a number of approvals specific to that change, and there will generally be a change board that sits and goes through those changes and just hooks in other teams to make them aware of what's going on, and just for scheduling purposes to make sure that we're not doing too many big changes at once that may have, one may have a knock-on effect on the other. You're not going to do a major upgrade of your network switches at the same time as trying to do something that is on a network-based application, because when one's testing one, they may not realize that the other one's actually causing their problem. Whereas in the DevOps world and in the Agile world, they're constantly iterating. What we see as a change, they see as normal day-to-day operation. When I was at a very web-based organization, they did a lot of A/B testing for marketing purposes, and they'd be constantly flicking between websites for different user groups, 80-20, 50-50. That seems to be working. We'll push that into live. Those sort of things around campaigns. You can't get that degree of flexibility in a rigorous change management process. So in organizations that are doing that, ServiceNow has a module that does release management. And there you can put in standard releases, standard things that are going to be done, and get pre-approval. You can get a schedule, an understanding, and the system will know when these things are going on and alert accordingly if anything goes wrong. But they don't have to go through the formality of a change management process and a change board, which, we've had a joke within service management for years. Dev teams calling themselves agile just means they want to avoid the change management process. They just carry on working exactly the same as they were, but, now they're agile. They don't need to do change management.
Okay, but in fact, they do, right?
Oh, of course.
They have to do it in some way. The worst thing that they can get is being called at 2 a.m.
Yeah, well, this organization that I worked at a few years ago that was very, very web-based, major website. That's where all the traffic was driven through. They did one of these release without change management processes, just a simple change. And they in the process, they excluded IE6 from working because they'd done all their due diligence. There was less than 2% of their user base across thousands and thousands of hits that were using IE6. So they thought, well, we'll just take the hit on them. They could see from their data that they weren't actually generating a lot of sales. They were just doing searches and utilizing the system. Because they hadn't informed us, and we didn't have a change management board, and we didn't listen to them and talk to the others, what they didn't realize was that 2% was the stores. We had IE6 still on the Citrix version that the stores were using, and the customers would go into the stores, sit at the desk talking to the person, and on a Thursday morning, it just stopped dead.
Fantastic.
So within the service management and the operations piece, we had to scramble to get Google Chrome put onto the Citrix piece. And then I went into town on a Saturday morning because we'd put the change live on a Friday night. And I went into town on a Saturday morning into one of these stores and just said, "Is it working today?" And they were like,
and they said, "Oh, so that was you, was it?"
Well, they'd understood what was going on by that point. They'd had a nice couple of days just sitting around drinking tea and chatting.
So actually they were quite happy with you, weren't they?
Yes. But, that it's those sort of things that when people are outside of the change process, it does have knock-on effects sometimes. And 99% of the time, they can make the changes and do their A/B testing, and it'll have no effect whatsoever. But if we're not aware, it can have unforeseen fallout. And that's why, we're moving for teams like that from change management to release management so that we can work with them to get a schedule of what they're doing, an understanding of the timings of when they're doing it, and they can get a system that they can work with that doesn't shoehorn them into weekly change board meetings and unnecessary to them delay.
Mm-hmm. That brings me to an interesting point, because the reason I invited you on this podcast was that I came across a remark of yours where somebody was complaining about the service management processes, and you kind of quipped, "Well, looks like your ServiceNow instance has just been bent to a process." And I found that really interesting. What do you mean by this?
So when you go to a service management tool, you've generally come from something else. You'll have had a help desk for years. And, in my instance that I mentioned earlier, where we used to have a mainframe, and, we literally had a guy in the office that would print out the tickets in the morning, and you'd walk around with a stack of papers fixing those things. If you take what we were doing there and then try and get it to the point where you've got a service management tool. If you don't change your way of working to the way the service management tool works, but you try and make the service management tool work the way you do, it's not going to go well. For a more concrete example, the change management process at a very large organization that I'd worked with, before ServiceNow came along, they had this concept of standard changes, and you didn't need approval for a standard change. But they were generally thought of as small, understandable changes. They put that into ServiceNow. Now, ServiceNow, in the change management piece, has approval built in. That's the way it works. That's the way change management works. But they modified the code in such a way that they could have this concept of a standard change that would then bypass all the approval. And the daft thing about it was the engineer raising the change was the one that made the classification as to whether it was standard or non-standard. And there was an instance of the engineer making a standard change that knocked out the entirety of the booking system for a large British airline for an entire weekend.
Oh, wow.
And nobody knew that it was going on because it was a standard change until it happened. That is kind of what I meant. I can't remember what the exact instance of the comment was, but it was something that they were saying was just counter to the way ServiceNow works. And I've seen it in so many organizations where the teams in existence have a process, and here comes this new tool, but they don't want to change the process.
But aren't they right to say, look, we have a system that works for us. Maybe ServiceNow is not the right tool for us. Maybe you should go with, something else. But should you really bend your process to ServiceNow, or shouldn't it rather be the other way around?
So from my perspective on that, if your process doesn't fit with ServiceNow, it's probably wrong. Because
that's how good ServiceNow is.
ServiceNow is built to the ITIL foundation, the ITIL framework. The ITIL framework has been built up by service management professionals over many, many years. The processes within that on how to deal with an incident, how to deal with a problem, how to deal with change have been embedded and, forged in fire over many, many years. If your organization gets a tool that does things that way and you go, nah, we do it this way, you're probably wrong.
Fair enough. So in that sense, you can say that ServiceNow is opinionated enough, if I hear you right, to sort of serve as this expression of this body of knowledge and not just as an business process automation engine.
Yeah, to an extent. I'm just trying to. I've got slightly distracted because I'm looking up what they were saying. Yeah. So in the original thread that we were looking at, they'd said that the process owners were annoyed that he filled in a form instead of watching a training video to find out where the secret hidden questions were. And that is exactly the sort of thing that I've seen in ServiceNow. They'll take a form that was in their original way of doing things, and it'll have all sorts of esoteric questions. And, if you use ServiceNow properly, you go onto an incident or a service request form, and you'll start filling in the information you want. The first few things you'll get will be drop downs, because that allows you to tailor what questions you need to ask the person. But the amount of times that I've seen it where they don't do that and they leave free text information in, and if you don't type in exactly the right thing that the person who created the catalog thought you were going to type in, it doesn't give you the options that you need to fill in to actually get your request. I mean, we haven't really touched on service requests, but that's just a slightly different side of service management. We deal with incident problem, which is where something's broken, but we deal with service requests as well, which is if you need something. If you need a user creating, you need access to a printer, you need a new laptop. The big one in that is obviously the new joiners, new leavers process, which will kick off hundreds of jobs to different teams if it's set up right, to make sure that, when the person walks in the door on day one, they've got a laptop, they've got a phone, they've got their email set up and all that sort of stuff. All that's run through ServiceNow and service request modules. And it certainly sounds like on the one we were reading that they'd gone through a basic service request process that hadn't been set up right. And there were hidden fields and hidden stuff that if you didn't type exactly the right keywords, you wouldn't get them. And therefore you would never get your your request actually acknowledged.
That sounds kind of like an escape room.
To a certain extent, it can be, yes. Yeah. But it's more like one of those really annoying crawler dungeons that we used to play on text screens back in the day. You type...
You're in a twisty maze of passages.
That's it, exactly.
Alike.
Yeah. Turn left. I don't know how to turn. Walk left. I now walk left. And if you don't type exactly the right thing, it's not going to work. But, when these things are set up properly, you should, as I say, you should have a number of drop downs at the top that allow us to tailor the form to ask exactly what you want, because it doesn't help anybody that if you've got a service request coming through or an incident that goes to the wrong team, all that does is put a delay in, and it doesn't make anybody happy.
As we've listened to you talk, I was wondering, you are very much in favor of announcing your intentions in advance, of, making changes known in advance, of asking for approval for a change to go through, etc., etc.
Yes.
Isn't that sort of really contrary to Agile, where you just sort of try it out and see if it works? And then if all of the shops in all of Britain suddenly fail, then oops, let's maybe roll back. So I guess what I'm getting at is that sounds a little more restrictive than the average developer would enjoy these days.
So there's two sides of it. I mean, a lot of change management processes are based around infrastructure changes, things that aren't time critical but need to be done. So, every Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the month, we get the latest Microsoft patches. Some of those might be critical and need to go out quite quickly. We get patches on networking equipment. We get upgrades on stuff that need to be done. And all of those things can generally go through a normal change management process, because you're not really running to get those things in ASAP, like this afternoon. You can wait a couple of days and get those in. Where we have a high priority incident where something's gone wrong, or we've got something that's come along, like that one that came along and did the
Log4j.
Log4j. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Mm-hmm. Yes, that was quite critical.
Yeah, it sounded like it.
And the change management process has two things that we can do. We can either do a urgent change or an emergency change. And those things just massively reduce the amount of time needed and the amount of approval needed. And in the case of a high priority incident, we may reboot and raise a retrospective emergency change later to cover the fact that we did something. In the case of developers, there's two sides of it. A lot of them do know when they're going to do something. They'll be working towards a release, or they'll be working towards something specific, and they can schedule that one in. And the change management process is flexible enough that, if it moves or shifts a couple of weeks, we can deal with that. Where you've got the stuff that we've been talking about previously, change management doesn't really lend itself to it. And that's what I was mentioning earlier with the release management module. ServiceNow have realized, like they're moving to cloud infrastructure, they're realizing that developers aren't doing big bucket release. They're doing minor changes, things that are constantly ongoing. And with the release management module, you can manage that sort of information. The developers work with us, and we get the right information in there, and we get the right level of understanding. It's not so much trying to shoehorn the developers and get them to follow our process. It's more making everybody aware of what's going on. Service management is that at its heart. If we know what's going on in an organization and something goes wrong, we know who to call. If you've got developers just throwing stuff onto the servers and trying what they like, and then we start getting users calling in to say something's broken, if we don't know what's going on, it's going to take us a lot longer to get the right people on the call. And developers with the best will in the world don't always have the information at their fingertips that something's not working.
Mm-hmm. How good is it possible to integrate this either change or a release management process into automated processes developers like to use, like continuous delivery pipelines in the one or the other way?
So the release management module within ServiceNow hooks into the major players of that thing. So that's what I mean in when I say we work with the developers to get a flow that works for them, so that we're aware of what's going on. The system is aware of what's going on, so that we can update the CMDB and therefore all the dependencies within the organization, but they still work within their tool. You know, a flip side of that, one that I'm very au fait with, when we raise a ticket that goes off to a third-party app dev team, it will quite often automatically raise that ticket in Jira.
Mm-hmm.
And Jira will automatically update the ticket in ServiceNow. So the developer doesn't ever need to go into the ServiceNow ticket to update it. They can live in Jira and keep their workflow going, and they can get their bug ticket raised, and they can do all their development and hook the patch back into their system, and the updates feed back seamlessly to ServiceNow. And when they close the Jira ticket, it triggers into the ServiceNow ticket to let the user know that update's been done, and we'll put it into a resolve state, and then the user will get 3 days to confirm, and then it'll close the ticket. So with something like that, the app dev team or the DevOps team is never going anywhere near ServiceNow. They're living in Jira, which is where they want to live. And for release management, it's very, very similar. They'll live within their tool, but that tool will talk to ServiceNow. It will raise the relevant tickets or the relevant announcements that we need, and everybody will be happy.
All right. Are those connectors to the different tools part of the ServiceNow ecosystem? Are they developed in each of those surrounding systems, or is there some kind of, I don't know, service bus or central connector that you support, or you would,
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways you can do it. In the first case, and the one that you default to if possible, they've generally worked with the other third-party organization to provide the connector. So if you hook into Jira, like I just said, they've worked with Confluence. So there is an official connector that talks from ServiceNow to Jira and back again. But if you're talking to something that doesn't have connectivity between the systems through an official connector, then there's an API, and at the very worst, you can just call HTTP and just talk directly to the calls on the back-end system.
Excellent. So I'm kind of running out of questions here, Steve. Is there a question that you think I should have asked but somehow didn't?
I don't think so. I think we've covered off the vast majority of what we do. I mean, you know, service management isn't this magical black box where things happen. It's just that bit of IT that everybody uses when things go wrong or when they want something.
Oh, kind of like the glue that holds things together?
It is indeed. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. In that case, I guess we can safely wrap up the show. So any final words, anything you would like to tell the listeners, Steve, before we send you off?
Well, only if they need a new head of service management, give me a call.
Oh, yes. So, dear listeners, if you are in need of a new head of service management, reach out to us and we'll get you in touch with Steve. And I suppose, Steve, you can be easily enough found on LinkedIn and all of these places, right?
I can indeed, yes.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. So, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. This was really interesting and very enjoyable.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much and enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, you too.